we have people, I mean, going back to the 11th century, at least to my knowledge, talking about certain scenes in the book of Exodus being out of order, such as the Ten Commandments may have come after the golden calf chronologically rather than before, like it is in the story, at least something that Sailhammer and
Hmm.
Rashi bring up. So it doesn't,
Hmm.
not that example specifically, but there's other
Yeah.
examples like that. So whenever we see, let's see, whenever we do some, source critical work and try to figure out what the original chronology of the events were,
Yeah.
how should that affect our reading? Should it at all? Should we just focus on a literary reading, a historical reading?
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Good question. So I'm not a source critic, and you don't have to know me very long to realize that. You're never going to hear me talking about JEDP. Not because I don't think there's any merit to the idea of sources, but because I find the whole enterprise to be so highly speculative and with so much disagreement that there doesn't seem to be a consensus. I find it much more interesting to look at the final literary design of the book, the form we have it in. But having said that, as I read it, there are times when it seems like the clues are there that this is not quite in order. And I don't take that to be evidence of different sources that have been inexpertly combined, but rather the brilliance of the narrator who is moving something around to make a particular point. So, one example that I'll mention is chapter 18, where Jethro visits Moses. It very carefully never mentions Sinai because they don't arrive at Sinai until chapter 19. But it says in verse 5, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, together with Moses' sons and wife, came to him in the wilderness where he was camped near the mountain of God. So he's near Sinai, hint, hint. And then they have this whole conversation. They report on what God did, and it's okay. So why put this here if where they are is the mountain of God? Essentially, they've arrived at Sinai. Why not put it later? I think it would interrupt a very important, like, prime focus on Yahweh speaking to the people when they arrive at Sinai. The arrival of Jethro would be an interruption in that sequence, and we would miss out on some of the framing that happens by having him right before Sinai. As I mentioned earlier, there's a bunch of literary links, like word links, between chapter 4 with the Zipporah story and its surrounding micro scenes and this chapter. So we have Jethro, we have Zipporah, we have the sons, we have meeting in the wilderness to kiss near the mountain. Like, there's all kinds of things that mimic each other from these two chapters. I think chapter 18 is functioning as the end of the rescue of Israel story. So it's kind of like parentheses or bookends or frames with chapter 4, which was the pivot between the rescue of Moses to the rescue of Israel. So then we have that resolved. The Jethro Zipporah question is resolved before we turn our attention to Yahweh at Sinai. It also accomplishes a even greater literary design feature that I find really fascinating. I didn't bring it with me, but I just got in the mail 2 days ago my copy of the Cambridge Companion to Biblical Narrative. I contributed a chapter on reading the wilderness narratives, and I have a chiasm in there that I have discovered that I haven't seen anywhere else. People have mentioned the kind of framing effect that on either side of the Sinai narratives, which run from Exodus 19 all the way to Numbers 10, on either side of that, you have a whole bunch of things that mirror each other, like the angel of Yahweh, the gift of manna and quail, a battle against the Amalekites, etc. But what I hadn't seen anyone actually uncover is the fact that they are in order. It's this giant literary sandwich on either side of the Sinai narratives. And check it out. If you go to Numbers chapter 10, which is where they are taking off from Sinai, what is one of the first things that happens? They leave Sinai. They're leaving in a particular order. And verse 29, chapter 10, verse 21, 9. Now Moses said to Hobab, son of Reuel the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law. So we've got a mention of a Midianite family member, male family member. We're setting out for the place about which Yahweh said, I will give it to you. Come with us and we will treat you well, for Yahweh has promised good things to Israel. So there's a conversation with the Midianite about joining in with the people of Israel, exactly on either side of Sinai. So that begins this chiastic structure that kind of has ripple effects going out through Numbers and back through the wilderness narratives of Exodus. So that is, I think that's why chapter 18 is out of chronological order, because it's functioning in important structural ways that we would miss if it interrupted God at Sinai.
So when we see things like that, we should be probably asking the question, not how did this actually historically happen, but why was it crafted this way?
Yes. Why tell this story here? What's it doing here?